Hi, I'm Nargis Molai on Access TV.
And I'm Imtiaz Popat. What's on the show today, Nargis?
So today's show is all about health, healing, and taking care of our planet.
And we have Chief Bill Wilson back talking to Gunargie O'Sullivan about the upcoming federal election. And then we have Silvaine talking to Chief Capilano and Irene about indigenous currency and economy.
That's right. And Imtiaz, you're talking to two local authors about their books on holistic health and also climate change.
That's right. And we're talking to Sherry Duggal and Am Joha about their new books.
That's right. But first up is Gunargie O'Sullivan in conversation with former Chief Bev Sellars on her award-winning book, where she takes us through her personal healing journey.
Welcome to Access TV. I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan, and I have special guest Bev Sellars in the house with me. She is the former chief of Soda Creek and the author of the book called They Called Me Number One. This book is an awesome book that has a recount of her own historical, personal history with residential schools and her history as an intergenerational survivor of residential school. She's more than a survivor. She's a warrior, and she has combated the impact of residential schools. And she's here to tell us more about it and her book called They Call Me Number One. How are you doing today?
I'm doing very well, thanks.
Yes, you're a survivor.
Oh, I'm more than a survivor. That's what people say, that I'm a survivor, but I prefer to say that I have won outright victory in this war because they did not manage to beat the Indian out of me. And so I'm more than a survivor. I'm very proud to be Indigenous, Aboriginal, whatever you want to call it. I am very proud of my Aboriginal roots, and so I'm more than a survivor.
Yeah, I always think that when they call us a survivor, it's just another word, like reconciliation has become, that a lot of people don't realize that we've gone beyond just surviving. We're actually attempting and have risen above the atrocities of the residential school.
Well, it speaks to the, to the strength of the Indigenous nations, because they have tried for 500 years to put us down, and we suffered mass deaths from all kinds of diseases. We've gone through all kinds of racist institutions. Some of them still exist, the Department of Indian Affairs. We've gone through the residential schools, and they have not managed to beat us down. Well, they've managed to beat us down. We're badly cracked, but not completely broken people. But we're gaining since 1951, when there was changes in the Indian Act, and it wasn't so they didn't have their thumb on us like that. We are starting to come back, and I look at the younger people now. I look at my children and my grandchildren, and I say, man, there's real hope for the future, and we're coming back strong again.
It's true that there are a lot of people out there from future generations who have a really good chance, they have a fighting chance, and a lot of that is because of the work that our generations have done and continue to do to rise above. But at the same time, we do still have a high rate of suicide, high rate of incarceration, and child apprehension. What can we say to our viewers to enable them to fight that battle?
To our native viewers or non-native viewers?
Well, let's start with our people.
Well, we still, with the residential schools, and then there was the 60 scoop. And in the book, I talk about when my first child was born, my daughter. And nowhere at any time did I tell anybody that I wanted to give her up for adoption. And yet, when I gave birth to her in the hospital, the nurses came to me and they had something, they said, sign this. They didn't tell me what it was or whatever. And normally, I was so programmed to just do whatever I was told. But that day, I said, what is it? And they said, adoption papers. I just about had a fit, so it's, because I'm Native, it was assumed that I wasn't fit to raise my children. And so they brought the adoption papers, and I wonder how many people, how many mothers have lost their children that way. Some have said that their babies were taken away, they didn't even see them, you know. And so with the 60 scoop and with the residential schools and with the high number of children still in care, you know, there has to be a change. In our tribe, the Secwepemc Nation, we tried to get control of our children, full control of all of our children who were Secwepemc. That was a Stamamalt project, we were calling it, and we wanted total control. You know, we tried for 3 years and that fell through. So it's not, you know, we're still looked at as not being fit enough to raise these children. And yet they're put in foster homes where they're not taken care of, where there's a lot of good foster homes. I shouldn't tarnish them all with that, but there are a lot of non-Aboriginal people out there who take our children just because of the money. And so, you know, there's a lot of work that needs to be done in that regard. But I think Aboriginal people are getting stronger, and they're really starting to go after total control of our lives.
I also think that our leadership needs to stop buying into the system that allows the Child and Family Services to take our children to begin with. And that we as First Nations people need to have more self-esteem and realize that we do have a responsibility, we do have a right to be parents. It shouldn't be a luxury to have a family that is intact.
Well, it's a basic human right.
It is.
I mean, you know, what other race are their children taken of us just because they're of that race? You know, and that has to stop. That is racism in its finest form, you know.
Yeah. We don't need to submit to that.
No. And, you know, I was taken away because my grandparents were Native, and I was taken to a residential school. But yet, when I was home with my grandparents, I never was hungry. I had love, and I had a safe home. When I went to the residential school, I was always hungry. I didn't feel safe. And, you know, there were things happened there that shouldn't happen to any kid, you know, and I was lonely. So, you know, I had a good home. They had no reason to take me, and yet they did. Only because my grandparents were Native.
Yeah. You have 1 minute. What would you like to tell the viewers of Access TV? How can we continue?
Well, I think that one of the good things about the book is that non-Aboriginal people are starting to realize what has happened. And so I would like that book to be used in universities and in high schools. My grandson actually used it. The teacher in his English class used it. So, you know, it's time that this part of Canadian history is not swept under the rug. It has to become a part of everybody's history. It's not just Aboriginal history. This is Canadian history. So I think people need to realize there's a lot more to it than residential schools. And that's this is my second book. So
okay. And so we'll talk more about Truth and Reconciliation, the Commission, and their recommendations. One at the top of the list is to make the history of residential school a part of the curriculum at the elementary level. Good point.
Doing laundry? I have a few tips that will help make sure that your washing machine's next load won't be its last.
Up next is Silvaine talking to Chief Capilano and Irene Mouse about Indigenous economy and currency.
Hi everyone, my name is Silvaine Zimmerman and I'm here for Access TV with my friends Irene and Chief Capilano, and I would like you to introduce yourselves with your names and titles, how you say them. Irene?
My name is Irene Moss Gravenhorst Kiapilanoq. Capilano is the English version, and I'm Kiapilano's significant other.
Chief Capilano?
And my real name is Siyam Kiapilano, but I go by both the English version of Capilano and both. So the Siyam is a rank of medicine man and leader of the Squamish from years ago. It's hardly used now, I think.
Yeah. So, Chief Kiapilanoq, I would love to have you explain to our audience why it's actually wrong to call you a hereditary chief and what it means to be a Siyam.
Well, according to my grandfather, no, he was 200 years old, or just about, when he died in 1959. We did not have any chiefs here with the Squamish. It's a method they've been using, and we know who they are, for divide and conquer. So there's so many chiefs, and now there's no Indians. How's that for?
Yes, and what is the significance of Siyam?
Well, it's just the rank and medicine man, the rank of my rank with the nation is the top.
Yeah. So if I call you Chief Capilano, is that actually not a good thing to say?
Well, to be recognized, I've been called that. I'm not going to complain about it, but I just wanted the people to know that we didn't have chiefs. And
It was it's the wrong word for what you had.
right.
Yeah. Well, today we're actually going to be speaking about an initiative that you have started, which is your own banking system, really. And so maybe I'd like to go to you, Irene, for the beginning, to have you explain to us what it is that this banking system is doing or is going to do, and how it compares with the kind of currency that the people on Salt Spring Island, for example, have already coined. Like, maybe it's just to explain what it is, how it's different, similar, and so on.
Okay. The Southern Squamish Bank on Kanata was recognized by the federal Canadian judicial system. And as a fiduciary custodian bank, we have our own currency, the Southern Squamish currency, or the Southern Squamish credit, or the Southern Squamish dollar, however you want to define money as. And what we have done is we have notified the IMF and the International Court of Justice of our position with our banking system. Why it is different from the Salt Spring dollar is that the Salt Spring dollar is limited to just the island.
Yeah.
You can't take the Salt Spring dollar and move into Vancouver with it and buy a cup of coffee at Starbucks here on Hastings. But with the Southern Squamish currency, we are branching out internationally. It's not just constricted to the traditional land claim. It goes everywhere. And the good news is that we have a sovereign bank that we're dealing with. The Hapu Maori Reserve Bank is accepted our currency as a recognized international exchange form of digitized currency. It's not crypto, but it is a digital currency. So, yeah.
Oh, that seems quite recent news. When did this happen?
Actually, about 2 weeks ago,
Okay.
and we're entering into final discussions with Europe over the card system that we want to expose and we want to provide to our members.
Okay.
Yeah.
And Chief Kiapilano, if I may call you that, I would love you to explain to us what was your motivation for coining this currency, or perhaps you'd like to say what motivates you to be here today, to speak out. It's been a long time.
Well, I think we're all one on this earth, and we're finding that Mother Earth is being destroyed, and we're working toward. I just had a trip up north, and I was totally devastated at what's happening up there, and it's a wonder that Mother Earth hasn't struck back at what we're doing to her. It makes me sick to see what's happening, and that's our goal: is to free the people with our bank and eliminate the taxes that can be. Money can be brought forward for different projects, such as roads and whatever. It's altogether different anyway, and that's our aim, is to free the people from taxes, and everybody should have their own home.
Yeah.
Without, you look at the price of homes in Vancouver, it's astronomical. It's gone beyond anything.
Yeah, yeah. So I think in past, talks with you, you've talked to me a lot about how we all need to come together to help heal Mother Earth for not only the sake of the human people on it, but also all beings. And your banking system seems to be one way of, I think, if I understand it correctly, divorcing the sort of natural resource raping of the earth and how that's connected with the monetary system that's dominant right now, to one that's based, I think, on your resources, but sustainably in a way. Am I correct in understanding that?
Well, absolutely. There's enough here for everybody, but we have to, I think these huge corporations that are dealing with the government the people are getting nothing for what's here. The resources are being shipped off and they receive absolutely nothing. And our people get very little out of what land our homelands are. And we're not, I say this, that they said that we've said before that we're the caretakers, but these are our homelands. And when you say caretaker, they say, well, you don't own it, so we'll take it, see? But well, I want them to know these have been our homelands before time immemorial. And I say before, meaning their history. So our verbal history, my grandfather passed it on to me, and I know there's many things that the people don't realize that what happened here yet. And I will later on do a book or whatever it takes to get them to find out what we really are.
So basically the motivation is you're speaking out as a caretaker to reclaim that need and to help all of us take better care of the
land. I think we should all speak the same way if they could only see what's happening. And we have chemtrails and we have everything else, and the politicians won't answer why. You know, I've asked a few of them, and that's none of their business. Well, it's got to be somebody's business. Whose business is it then if there's the chemtrails are actually killing people and doing a lot of harm to our people? And I say our people, I mean all the people living on Squamish lands. It's time we stood up and found out what really is happening.
Thank you very much. 8 minutes passes quickly. Thank you so much for coming in today. And we'll make sure that when you do write your book, we'll have you come back and let people know what it's called and they can read it. Thank you.
I just want to, for closing, one of the things that we always do is we gift tobacco.
Oh.
And so here you go.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Silvaine.
Thank you very much. I'll treasure it. I won't smoke it, but I'll use it in another way to honor your gift. Thank you so much. Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
It's taken 8 years of hard work and due diligence to have the necessary foundation ready to have this currency recognized.
Please load the items one at a time. Don't take a large armful and cram them in. Lower them in, dry and uncompressed, and let them gently crumple and fold so they can take up as much space as they need. Make sure you balance. I've put one item on the left side, so now I'll put another item on the right. Both these items will be similar fabrics, so they'll be equally balanced. Take absorbency into account, so if you have one item that absorbs lots of water, it will be heavier than the other, so make sure you balance it properly. For a top loader, imagine the circle like a pizza, and each piece of clothing has its own piece of pie. Now this towel is heavier, so it'll be more absorbent. I may have to add items on the other side to balance it out.
Welcome back to Access TV. I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan. Now I'm sitting with Chief Bill Wilson, Hereditary Chief Bill Wilson, also known as Hemaas. Now today we're going to talk about the up-and-coming federal election whenever Stephen Harper chooses to call that election. We can go from there, hopefully. October, yeah.
Well, I mean, we talked on the phone earlier this morning, and to me it doesn't matter a darn what political party gets in power, because all of them historically have been exactly the same. I've seen every prime minister since Pedersen, I've spoken with, and every premier since W.A.C. Bennett. And believe me, there is absolutely no difference between or among any of the white man's political parties. They'll make you any promises that you could possibly want to hear, and then they'll drag you to the polls, and you'll never see them again for 4 years.
Yeah.
And the reality is, think about this, if anybody thinks that there's some kind of promise in the white man's political party, ask them when the last treaty signed that they've lived up to.
So you're saying that their promises are as good as their apologies, almost meaningless? That's
well,
what
I mean, they're less spirited, but I mean, they're just as useless. I mean, the reality is that, like I remember campaigning for the NDP. We had faith in the CCF. My mother was a member of the CCF party before she had a vote. Now think about that. She was a campaigner before she had a vote. And then, when the CCF morphed into the NDP under Barrett finally became government, the first thing that Barrett and Levy did was deny Aboriginal title and treaty claims in the province of British Columbia. Don't talk to me about white man's political parties. I mean, I'm not listening to you.
Okay, then enough of that. Let's move on. But in some ways, it's all interconnected. The Truth and Reconciliation Commission just finished its work. They've made recommendations. Others have made recommendations within the United Nations Declaration. And then we also...
Which Canada opposed.
Yes, and then we have the recommendations from the missing and murdered women.
And good work. I mean, I know Murray very well, and Willie and Marie very well. I've known them for a long time. They're good people. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, they got paid extremely well for a process that was pretty much exhaustive. The problem with it is the recommendations will sit there forever and nothing will be done about it. I mean, clearly the province of British Columbia has a responsibility to respond in terms of children.
Yeah.
The reality is that 64% of all the kids in care in the province of British Columbia are Aboriginal people. That's not the federal government's problem. That's our problem. Indian people and Christy Clark. So what are these recommendations going to accomplish? Probably very little, because they will sit on a shelf. They'll be read by academics. I haven't even read them. I'm not entirely sure where I would get one. But what are they going to do? I mean, what really has to happen is what you were talking about earlier with Chief Bev Sellars, or it's not the chief anymore, but Bev Sellars, is that kind of knowledge about personal experience in a residential school has to get out to Canadians. That book should be in the hands of every elementary school student in this entire country.
That's right.
And it should be read as required curriculum.
Yeah, but will it be?
I didn't even know about the residential schools, even though my mom and father and brothers and sisters and nephews and everyone went to residential school. I grew up to be a full adult, completely ignorant about the Holocaust that occurred to our people.
Yeah.
Well, I'm a pretty smart guy. If I didn't know, what do you think about Joe Redneck? He doesn't know anything about it. And he needs to know.
Yeah.
We need to know. But the only way it's going to happen is if we start to train kids with knowledge. Because ignorance is not inbred. Ignorance to me simply means lack of information.
True.
And if you can provide people with information, like Bev's book, or like Bev's presentations, or speaking, or other things like that, then people will be able to understand. There are a lot of non-Indian people in this country that really understand, want to listen, want to do something.
Yeah.
But they don't lie within the political parties who just want your vote and won't see you for 4 years.
Well, you said you didn't go to residential school and you didn't know anything about residential schools. But you know what is even sadder is that people who did go to residential schools don't even realize what had been done to them and what the impacts are, why they are the way they are. And not only would books like They Call Me Number One help people to understand the experience, but it would also help people like myself to understand my own experience.
I know people, believe it or not, I'm 71 years old, And I know people that went to residential school for 12 or 13 years that try and tell me that it was a good experience, that they
Wow.
learned something.
Yeah.
And these are people, some of whom were sadly sexually abused,
Yeah.
you know, are
Yeah.
still telling me that the church that ran the school is a good one. They're still telling me the education was a good one. And it amazes me how you can indoctrinate people over a period of time to believe any atrocity
That's
is
right.
somehow justified by exercising authority over people.
Yeah.
It makes me sick.
I heard of a lady who went to residential school. She grew up, she had alcohol and drug problems, and she actually called the ministry on herself in the end and lost all of her children. Now her children won't even talk to her.
Well, there's thousands and thousands of stories. And you know, the tragedy which has been revealed by the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, but gradually is penetrating the Canadian public, is thousands of people committed suicide.
And continue to
Committed
commit
suicide because they were hopelessly frustrated with what went on. And you know, the most important thing that I'm sorry, I just about said bastards, so I won't say that. The most important thing that they did was they tried to reduce people to less than human beings in order to make sure that they didn't have the right to protest. So if you're beaten down, beaten up, abused, and you don't do anything about it, now they've got control of you. Now come over, we're going to pray.
Yeah, and now we have Bill C-51 that is being implemented and will also continue to take our rights away to
Well,
protest and be activists.
I mean, that's just simply part of Harper's crime and punishment agenda.
yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
you know, and you know, with all due respect, I mean, he's not that smart. The government's not that smart, but they do have the cosmetic approach about crime and punishment. That's why Jim Chu is going to be running in Vancouver, Granville, against my daughter, by the way.
Oh,
Which-
Ed
which-
Wong. Edward Wong is running against
Well,
your daughter,
you will find out.
Jody
Jim
Wilson.
Chu will be the candidate, but he's a law and order candidate and a good guy. I understand. I've only met him once, but you see, Harper will be preaching this anti-terrorism, law and order, more prisons, you know,
That's
and
right.
then ignoring TRC resolutions or anything like that, and saying, listen, you know, if we just had more police, everything would be great. I don't think so. I don't think so. What we need is more understanding, and what we really need from the Canadian public is for them to understand what happened to our people.
Awesome. We've been speaking with Bill Wilson, also known as Hereditary Chief Hemaas, and I'm Gunargie O'Sullivan. We'll talk to you again very soon.
For more information on findings and recommendations, please go to trc.ca.
For some items, you may want to turn them inside out to protect lettering or buttons. For top loaders, never wrap items around the middle. Otherwise, they can get caught or chafed on the agitator. Instead, take the large items and fold them. Then lower them in with the long side up, allowing them to crumple under their own weight so that they don't take up too much space. You can put the smalls on top and the big heavy ones in the bottom first. That way, the small items don't weigh down the big ones. If we had it the other way around, the heavy large items might compact the small items and not allow them to move freely through the water. When you've properly loaded the machine, you'll find that when the machine is washing, you'll see the items float freely. They'll come up to the tops of the surface, go across to the middle, and then down to the bottom again. This way we're ensuring the perfect cleaning and a nice gentle wave action. If we don't pack items too tight together, then they'll be allowed to move freely so that they don't chafe or rub. But if the machine's packed too tight, when the center agitator goes back and forth, it'll chafe and rub on the materials and create lint or pilling, fabric damage.
Hi there, I'm Wendy Pedersen, and I'm here to talk about hot topics with two of my good friends, Gunargie O'Sullivan and Gary Olver. So Gunargie, tell us about Reconciliation Matters. There was a big event that just happened in Vancouver.
Thanks, Wendy. It was awesome. Reconciliation Matters happened at 1088 Burrard Street, and we got to hear from such leaders as Douglas White and Sean Atleo. Douglas White actually called it what it is. He said that the residential school era was nothing less than an attempt of cultural genocide on our people.
So this
you can imagine what that was like to hear within the Anglican Church.
And this was the
amazing.
closing of the whole 6-year Truth and Reconciliation process, right?
Yeah.
And tell us about the Sister Says.
Sister Says was there, and they did
Who is
an
that?
awesome performance. It's a brother-sister duo, which is really important because part of reconciliation is being able to rebuild your families, right? And the other thing is that the TRC has made their findings now. And with those findings, they've made recommendations. 3 of the most important are like implementing the history of residential schools at an elementary level within a curriculum at schools, plus looking at the missing and murdered women, and also housing.
Oh, right, that's awesome. That's
And the
awesome.
high rate of poverty and incarceration and blah, blah, blah.
Well, tell us, this ties in also to the Mary Ellen Turpel report,
That's
the
right.
story that or the recommendations that this BC advocate promoted around Paige's story. Can you tell us about that?
Well, Mary Ellen Turpel made recommendations, some of which are like to make child and family services accountable when they come across stories like Paige's story, where there have been like reports made on her. They need to follow up on those reports, and if they're not, there has to be something in place to put the ministry and make the ministry accountable, which is a concern to me because we already have a high rate of child apprehension. If this is implemented, then that means that the rate of child apprehension will only go up.
I'm recommending that MCFD immediately move to ensure that no children in care or receiving its services reside in SROs in the Downtown Eastside. And while I know that they will say they have a policy that no children are there, they are there. As recently as this week, I received yet another reportable of an overdose of a girl in an SRO. Fortunately, she survived the overdose, but will she be returning to an SRO to live again? I'm calling on the Attorney General of British Columbia to take steps that I first recommended in a report, Lost in the Shadows, to ensure that those who fail to report child abuse and fail to report when a child is in need of protection face a consequence. The Child, Family and Community Service Act has a requirement that all people in British Columbia who suspect a child is in need of protection report it, but especially those working in systems of care for children must report. And I'm calling upon the Attorney General to push toward enforcement of that provision. There has never been a prosecution in British Columbia for failing to report. I've asked the Attorney General to look at this in the past. I've asked the Director of Child Welfare and the Attorney General to work with doctors and nurses and others to get better compliance with the duty to report. But here there were multiple instances where Paige was in a hospital, Paige was in a jail cell, Paige was in a shelter in an SRO where people did not report. And this persistent lack of compliance requires a strong response. We certainly must put a stop to the normalizing of unacceptable outcomes that perpetuate the cycle of intergenerational trauma that characterizes the lives of so many Aboriginal families and Aboriginal children. These outcomes should never be considered normal for any child. Paige was left for years in a situation in which no reasonable person would find acceptable for their own child, yet no one acted. There is a pathway for vulnerable children like Paige that frequently ends up in the Downtown Eastside, and many Aboriginal girls and women, as we well know, do not experience good outcomes in terms of that pathway. It's a known pathway. Many people have stated the desire and willingness to change that pathway, but it's going to take some actual action to see that change. Words alone will not be enough. Certainly you will note in this report that I've expressed deep concern as a representative that despite what I would count here as more than 50 critical incidents involving Paige just in the last 3 years of her life, as representative for children and youth, I actually only received one reportable circumstance of an injury during the last 3 years of her life. A second one came after she was dead. It's very difficult for someone like me to do my job as representative for children and youth when I do not even get notified about what's happening in the life of a child. And when we look at Paige's experience, and I look at the experience of other children similar who have experienced similar barriers, I'm very concerned about the level of underreporting, including in my role. I've asked my chief investigator, who's with me today, Bill Naughton, to be available to speak specifically to the level of frustration that we've experienced surrounding this failing to report, failing to track injuries for children, and also failing to share the responsibility to learn from them. And I say that this report, which is a difficult report on Paige's life, no other agency reviewed Paige's death. There was no review by the Ministry of Children and Families. There was no coroner's inquest. There was no review within the healthcare system of the 17 plus times that she was taken into hospitals in this area and released. It's very important that there be learning, and that the learning happen in a more collaborative environment where people are more willing to take this out and talk about how we're going to change that.
So what was Paige's story, just in a nutshell?
Paige died of an overdose in the Downtown Eastside at the early age of 19 after numerous amounts of calls were made on her behalf to the ministry and nothing was done.
Right, so that's shocking. And
Very shocking.
I hope to see more about that. So Gary, you've been talking about this new church and the services that they're providing. It's called El Redentor, and it's on 49th Avenue at 2151. But can you tell us a little bit about what's happening there?
Yeah, I found these guys like if a person's in need, that need like say beds, clothing, food, like an emergency. They can give them a call, and they'll come and assist, and and they're really, really polite, and they'll be there, to help you out, and they're a phenomenal group that works in the Downtown Eastside.
Okay, it's great that you could give them a plug today. Their phone number, and we'll put it show it on the screen. It's 604-659-4225.
Yeah, you know what? If you make one call to them, they'll be at your doorstep almost within minutes.
That's so good.
They're
That's
amazing.
So also, Gary, what about the Gallery Gachet? What's happening there?
We got some
Mad
real
Pride?
special events happening down at the Gallery Gachet. It starts June 19th and it goes to July 31st of 2015, and it's called Mad Pride Street Sign. And basically, it's a collaboration of 3 artists. And those artists are Quinn Martin and Andrew McPhail. They do photos. It's basically they do installations, and then we have our very own Gunargie O'Sullivan doing an installation.
Shamelessly promoting herself.
Yeah, and it's called Demolishing Grief, and you can see that at 7 o'clock at Gallery Gachet on Friday, the 19th.
And maybe we can put the address on the screen, and it's on Cordova Street in the Downtown Eastside. It's a great gallery.
Before we go, I'd like to say that our very own cameraman here at Access TV has helped me to edit this installation piece called Demolishing Grief. And it'll be interesting to hear more from him about his experience as an editor. His name is Jules Rios, R-I-O-S.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So, Gunargie, you also wanted to talk about the federal election. So, Jenny Kwan, Edward Wong, tell us why this is important for us to be paying attention to as a hot topic.
Well, I think it's important for us to be paying attention to that because they are trying hard to know what our issues are. Now, we know that Jenny Kwan has been out in the field for a number of years, but Edward Wong, has not been as prominent as him. And what I think is important is that he is interested in knowing what our issues are.
So tell us which riding this is at. Which riding are we talking about for?
Vancouver.
For Vancouver East,
Yeah,
right? Vancouver
that's
East.
right.
Yeah, and which party do they belong to?
Edward Wong is with the Liberals, and of course Jenny Kwan is with NDP.
Okay, and when does this, is there any events coming up, do you know of? Or?
Well, I think that we're going to be seeing a lot more of Edward Wong. He's going to be going from event to event, so be sure to let him know and invite him. And Jenny think Juan is always there for us.
And what do you think we should be pushing for in the platform?
Well, I think that they should be looking at the recommendations that have been made within the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, www.trc.ca. They should be looking at the United Nations Declaration, no-brainers like that. We have recommendations from the Missing and Murdered Women's Inquiry. Why not look at them and begin to implement them and make them happen? That's what they're there for. Don't just put it on a bookshelf and leave it there and make those recommendations meaningless.
So we should also be promoting housing, and
That's right.
You guys know that Downtown Eastside housing is a passion of mine. I just went to a city council meeting, a city meeting, and I learned that the number of units that we need for Downtown Eastside residents, the city told us 9,500 units for people who are homeless. 9,500 units for people that are homeless, living in the SROs, or families that are paying more than 50% of the rent. That's just in our neighborhood alone. We know that people all around the city and beyond need housing too. But I wanted to talk about quickly, there's a new project called the Stanley New Fountain that's they're demolishing in close to Gastown, and it's a homeless shelter right now. So they're going to replace the 50 units of housing there, but they're also going to build like tons of market housing. And I think it's such a shame when we have such a huge amount of need that we're only getting 50 units. So I wanted to bring that up.
What's this about the Empress Hotel?
Well, the Empress Hotel, lots of people know about that. It's close to Hastings in Maine. It's like an iconic SRO, single room occupancy hotel. It just sold for $7.7 million. Wow.
That's crazy.
I know.
That's
it's expensive, and we're scared that the 74 people that live there could be replaced or moved out for higher rents. When you pay a lot for a property like that, you're going to want to get some rents back.
So what was the for the street market?
Oh yeah, just quickly, just because we're wrapping up on Hot Topics now. If people know about the Sunday street market that happens on Carroll Street, the city's trying to move it. So there's a lot of, I predict there's going to be some struggle there. People want to stay down on Carroll Street because that's where all the customers are, and the city wants to move them way out of the way. So we should follow that as a hot topic next month.
Yeah.
So we've got to wrap up. So I just want to thank Gunargie and Gary for paying attention to all the hot topics out there, and thanks. We'll see you next time.
And we want to thank you for being hot.
Unceded Coast Salish Territory, Vancouver, British Columbia. Welcome to Carnegie Television. On June 19, 2015, we attended a media briefing on the renovictions at the former SRO, Single Room Occupancy, Hotel Clifton at 1125 Granville Street. This is the story about our city and a man's 24-hour living with a single room occupancy renovation.
I'm very pleased. I'm very, very pleased.
A week earlier, Mohammed Valayati, a tenant of the Hotel Clifton since March 2013, received welcome news. Dispute Resolution Services, BC Residential Tenancy Branch, ordered the landlord to provide Valayati immediate possession of the rental unit, unfettered access to the main entrance, and essential services, including light and water.
Housing is a human right. That is why we have to fight. Housing is a human right. That is why we have to fight. Housing.
I feel like it's a victory for everybody who was evicted illegally out of this building. People pushed into the homelessness, and more than that, I see it as a victory because a judge listened to our story and she granted me the possession of my room, and she have also ordered the landlord to turn all the essential back on. And this victory would have been not possible without the SRO collaborative help.
2468 SRO collaborate. 2468 SRO collaborate. Renters' rights. Renters' rights.
The newly formed SRO Collaborative Project, a group of SRO tenants, organized a briefing with former tenants of the Hotel Clifton to explain how they became homeless as a result of renovictions.
He just won a remarkable decision from the arbitrator judge that ordered the building services to be turned back on in this closed building. So this is a victory for tenant rights.
The SRO Collaborative wants government to stop the renoviction scenario that has happened in at least 23 Vancouver residential hotels. Relentless anti-poverty organizer Jean Swanson fears the loss of more SRO housing.
So the SRO hotels are the last stop before homelessness. And what's happening is the owners are kicking people out and doing small little renovations and then raising the rents a lot so that people on welfare and disability can't afford them anymore.
Just hours after the media briefing and celebration, city staff showed up. The building was declared unsafe for human habitation, overturning the court decision.
Well, I will leave that to the mercy of the court. We will throw that at the court and let's see what kind of response we get.
The next day, we caught up with Mohammed Valayati and Wendy Pedersen at the SRO Collaborative weekly meeting in the Downtown Eastside. They are not giving up.
Right now, that was my address, and without it, I'm homeless. I'm considered homeless. And yesterday we were there, we were celebrating the victory of winning the order of possession for my room. But since fire department and the city called it inhabitable, so I'm still homeless. However, I have a court order, so now I can follow it. And then, but it's going different direction now. Before I was persistent, I wanted my room back, and he give me a proper eviction notice. But now none of this is going to work, and I have to go back to the RTB and consider some claims, financial.
We've learned a lot from the Clifton Hotel and Mohammed's experience. He will be in small claims court. We'll help him through the residential tenancy branch. We've got 2 hearings lined up. He's going to get compensation for all of the inconvenience that he's gone through and damages related to his being homeless. And we're going to pass on these lessons to other tenants. Mohammed will be, I will be, others will be, and tenants can fight for their rights. We're not going to give up hope on the Clifton Hotel. It's not over till it's over, as they say. And the 3 levels of government can still take action to secure that hotel so we can open up those rooms for low-income people again so that people don't have to live on the street.
Well, because I didn't do anything wrong, and whatever done to me was wrong by the landlord. That's why I have a great faith on the justice system, because I'm right, I'm winning. However, he's just fighting in a different direction and fighting in a dirty way. But instead of presenting me with my room and then presenting me the key, he invited the fire department and the city to declare the building unsafe. But I still have a faith in justice system. I know they will make this matter to go right. So I'm gonna follow the path I'm going to the end, just through the justice system. And I'll show the righteous will always prevail with the end.
Housing is a human right. That is why we have to fight. Housing is a human right. That is why we have to fight. Housing is a human right. That is why we have to fight. Housing is a human right. That is why. Oh yeah.
Yeah, I got one. The SRO Collaborative is assessing the momentary victory, its implications in terms of the upcoming release of the homeless count, tenant rights, and the future of SRO housing stock.
Renters' rights. Renters' rights. Renters' rights. Renters' rights. Renters' rights.
On unceded Coast Salish territory, Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. Sid Chow Tan reporting for Carnegie Television.
You'll know the machine is full when it's about 2/3 full of dry, uncompressed laundry. If the clothing is wet, it won't take up as much space. So when the machine is half full, that's a good place to stop.
Hi, this is Imtiaz Popat here, and I have with me Sherry Duggal and Am Joha, who both presented at the Mirch Masala Mayfield we had at the Grand Cafe for Asian Heritage Month. Thank you both for being here. Sherry, now you're a naturopath,
Yes.
and you've written this book, Beneath the Surface. Tell us about that.
Well, my book was inspired by Chinese medicine philosophy, and one of the key images in my book is the 5 elements, which is fire, earth, air, water, space. Now, the 5 elements are a key theme in all ancient forms of medicine, whether it's Chinese medicine, Ayurvedic, or even Tibetan medicine. So I wanted to incorporate that into the central character's healing journey, what she goes through. And what she's trying to figure out is, what is happiness?
Wow, it sounds fascinating.
Thank you.
Am, your book is about climate change. Tell us about your book.
Yeah, my book started out as a doctoral dissertation, and I was sort of thinking through the problem of climate change through philosophy as such a major event that's happening, trying to look through old texts to see what kind of age-old questions we can think about again. And I particularly was working through a French philosopher named Alain Badiou, who predominantly doesn't talk about climate change in his work, but was really around the idea of militant political change. He was very much affected by May 68. And so my project was really trying to bring together his work around militant political change and thinking through the problem of climate change today.
I think it's a very timely book, and the thing is that your book is more about the health of the planet, and yours is about personal health, and they're definitely interconnected.
Both are interconnected.
Because what happens to the climate affects our personal health as well, right? So how do you see these issues connected?
Well, the 5 elements are definitely a part of us. Without the 5 elements, we wouldn't survive.
Right.
So the external and the internal are definitely interconnected, and that's what my book emphasizes. And if we can't take care of ourselves, our mental health, there is no way we'll be able to take care of our external planet, which includes clean water, clean air, clean land, which we can grow vegetation on.
Right, and we're responsible for the planet as well. We have to take care of the planet because it's what's caused climate change.
Philosophical questions like the relationship between anxiety and courage that people as far back as Plato talked about, and Badiou, in one of the philosophers who does look at Plato quite closely, brings up that question in terms of what kind of a subject do we need today that will be involved in that relationship of making change, in terms of what kind of change we need to be looking at, and also that relationship between change and tradition and how they relate to one another. These are questions that come up in every epoch, and in this context where climate change is an existential question, in a previous era we had the possibility of nuclear war that could have killed off humanity as such, and climate change brings up the question in a new kind of way. And so a lot of grappling with these questions is actually dealing with old questions just in a new context that we have today.
And these questions are all internal. So if we ask ourselves questions, I like to do a self-check, like as much as possible throughout the day. How am I feeling? Why am I feeling this way? Asking yourself questions creates more awareness, self-awareness, and that awareness in particular affects our external environment, our relationships, and not only our relationships, but the physical environment that is around us.
Now, both your books are available on Amazon. Where else can we get your books?
The book is available at Pulp Fiction, People's Co-op Bookstore, and the Or Gallery.
And mine is also available on Flipkart, Amazon, and I will be doing a local book launch, so everyone can stay posted. They can check out my website, and they can get details through there in terms of when and where it's happening.
Is there anything you'd like to add?
Well, today foods are depleted, our water is not clean, the air quality is being affected. So even kids are getting a lot of diseases like diabetes, cancers are prevalent. So it's not only the mental, it's how the external environment affects the internal environment. So doing a self-check is very important. Asking yourself, how do I feel? Why do I feel this way? Not being afraid of all those emotions, even the negative ones. Sadness, fear, anger. Acknowledging them, working through them is a key part in healing and in creating an environment that is healthy for all those around us.
Great. And Am, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, for me, this project was predominantly started with the kind of frustration of environmental ethics and environmental philosophy in terms of not getting to the questions that I felt needed to be asked. And so that's essentially what this project was about.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thanks for both for being here, and thank you for the conversation.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
You can find both Sherry and Am's books on People's Co-op Bookstore and also Amazon.
And the Indian Summer Festival is on, and there is a free exhibition at the Vancouver Art Gallery outside space. For more information, you can go to indiansummerfest.ca.
If you have a front load washer, make sure you check your pockets. One of the most common issues with front loaders is coins getting stuck in the pump. It's a very common issue, and sadly, it's very preventable. So always check your pockets. And if you have any items that have buttons or metal pieces that may come loose, always use a mesh laundry bag to help prevent those items from falling into the machine. For bras, you can use mesh laundry bags that are made specifically for bras. They have a tighter weave so that the bra underwire doesn't slip out. Also, they usually help to keep the bra's shape. Following these tips will help make sure that you don't damage your machine or your fabrics, and you get the machine to wash the clothes clean every time.
When we see you next month, we will have information on the transit referendum, so we'll have updates for you on that.
I'm Imtiaz Popat.
And I'm Nargis Molai. Please visit us on accesstelevision.ca. Thank you so much for watching.